Dos, this isn't Duke Nukem 2, you said Duke Nukem 2 is next! I know, but that was a few months ago now, and that video is just going nowhere. If I change it anymore, it's gonna be as atrocious as my dig video. So let's talk about another forgotten badass while Duke takes a quick break. Say what you will about Activision Blizzard, but this arcade collection is pretty good. You have the upgraded versions of the Lost Vikings, Rock'n'Roll Racing, and of course Blackthorne, as well as their SNES and Genesis ports, for completeness sake I guess. As for the upgrade part, it's only really Rock'n'Roll Racing that actually had any upgrading done. The gameplay is unchanged, but you have the actual songs instead of synth tracks, and Larry Huffman has more lines to say.
Scientists began settling Chem 6 because its diverse climates made certain scientific studies easier than on any other settled planet.
The most Blackthorne gets is a map screen. Not that you need it, the game isn't that hard to navigate. If you're unfamiliar with the gameplay of Blackthorne, it's a step platformer. This genre includes classics like Prince of Persia, Abe's Odyssey, and Flashback. They used to be called cinematic platformers, and according to the blurb, it's action-adventure? Why do people keep calling everything action-adventures? It's not an action-adventure. Like, this is an action-adventure. This is a step platformer. Maybe action-adventure is just too broad a title to use. But anyway, the story of Blackthorne takes place on the planet Tool, where there is the Kingdom of the Lightstone, home of the Andrathi, and the Kingdom of the Darkstone, home to the very 90s and very evil Count Rasul, led by the mighty Sarlac.
Your command, Master!
King Blaros makes his last stand tonight at Stonefist. Order a full attack and leave no survivors. And bring me the Lightstone. Go now.
Sarlac's forces waste no time flooding into the Andrathi castle. King Blaros sends his son Kyle to Earth with the Lightstone as a final act of defiance. 20 years pass with Kyle becoming a military man and mercenary, constantly preparing for the day his destiny comes knocking. We appear inside the Xandralite mines. Here we find many Andrathi survivors laboring or just chained up. You can talk with them, they'll usually give you hints or items. Some of them are understandably less than helpful. And we also meet the various Horde rejects. The most common enemy are the Grags. The manual says they are goblins. Sure, why not? They helpfully introduce us to the combat. Since Blackthorne isn't as mobile as other action-adventure heroes, this becomes a cover shooter for the most part. Possibly the first cover shooter ever made. Typical cover shooter rules apply: wait for the gap in the enemy's attack and retaliate. Get the timing wrong and you get knocked on your ass. One neat trick I learned is that you can roll behind enemies while they're taking cover and they won't react. It's pretty handy, especially later on when you only got so much space to work with. Oh, and before I forget... Yeah, I can only imagine the angry messages I would get if I didn't at least mention the iconic backward shotgun blast. Not the most useful ability due to a number of reasons, but you can't argue that it looks cool. Let's talk about these multicolored enemies. The basic green Grags lack any resistance to bullet poisoning, and they're also slightly slower than most other Grag. You can usually cap them before they even notice you. Red and purple Grags take an extra hit to kill and like using explosives. Red Grags will often roll hover bombs your way, which are easily avoided, or better yet, hit them during the rolling animation for a free hit. Purple Grags will send a remote-controlled wasp towards you. Don't bother avoiding this explosive, just shoot the thing before it gets to you. The toughest enemies in the mines by far are the War Orcs. They are immune to your pitiful buckshot, so just toss a grenade in their face instead. Speaking of grenades, this game has an inventory system, which I only bring up because the game treats explosives like keys. You'll run into metal doors and force field generators that need to be blown up. And if you wasted the exploding keys before you reach them, then, well, I hope you enjoyed the level up until now, because you get to experience the magic all over again. You also need explosives to get important items off of trolls or just to get them out of the way. Other items you'll see a lot are bridge keys and levitators, but those are at least reusable, so don't worry about soft locking with them. I actually like the inventory puzzling in this. It helps the levels flow and gets away from the pressure plate and time door puzzle. Not that the game doesn't use that, but mercifully it's not as ubiquitous as it is in the Mechner Prince of Persia games. Although there is that one that is particularly annoying. The game doesn't have too many annoyances, but that little section is... we'll get to it. Other less significant annoyances include enemy patrol timing being somewhat random, meaning they can and will stand in annoying places for extended amounts of time because why not? Item drops can be hidden by foreground objects, despite the foreground being fairly clean, so if you aren't paying attention to the item indicator you could easily miss a much needed item. And because talk and climb are the same button, you can rarely run into this issue. Let me leave. Let me leave, please. Don't you fucking dare! Oh, you ass. And just as he finally moves, great.
Word travels fast of your deeds to defeat Sarlac. Take this weapon, friend. It was stolen from a guard. It's more powerful than what you are carrying.
With that, we go from pump action to semi-auto. There are 2 other gun upgrades we'll get as we progress, but I'd argue this one is the most important because it lets you double tap basic enemies if your timing is good. So what exactly are we doing in the mines? Well, we're looking for Galadriel, the wizard from the intro cutscene. He's the one who sent us to Earth and he's the one who brought us back. This helpful chap tells us he's somewhere at the top of the catacombs. I wouldn't call this the top of much, but okay. Galadriel wants us to finish 2 more episodes before we face Sarlac. He gives us the first health boost and sends Kyle to the forests of Tool to find the seer known as One Hand. But if you're playing the 32-bit version, he instead sends you to some snowy place. He still tells you to find the seer, he's just an asshole about it in this version.
Laros' heir has returned. When he is destroyed, no one will stand against me. Find him and crush him.
Welcome to the 32-bit version of Blackthorne, released for the 32X. It's included with the arcade collection, and aside from the snowy levels, you've got altered environment art, sprites made from 3D rendered models instead of crispy pixel art, and audio that sounds like this. Yeah, not a big fan of what they've done to the game. At least Lost Vikings 2 on DOS leaned into the bad quality. Speaking of Lost Vikings...
Gee, Eric, being here's a lot like being lost or something.
This segment is kind of pointless. You don't gain a better gun, the story goes nowhere. It's just a hump episode, and for some reason this hump episode is extra difficult. The first 2 levels aren't too bad. A bit long but manageable. The designer really likes war orcs. You don't see any off to the mines, so I guess that's fair. Then you hit level 3, which is full of war orcs. The level plays on your expectations a bit. The game has up until now taught you to kill war orcs for loot or to get them out of the way. No, this level demands you forget all of that and avoid them. If you waste bombs on these trolls, then you will get nothing. Don't do it, because you can bypass most if not all of the war orcs if you abuse their slow ass animations. The worst one that comes to mind is this guy. You have to bait his attack, jump past before he hits you, and climb up before he turns around. Holy hell, this is third-party expansion levels of dickery, which is exactly what it is, I guess. On one hand, the challenge was refreshing, on the other, how the hell is anyone new to the game supposed to get past this? Level 4 doesn't have any war orc entrapment, thankfully, although I really thought it would. Instead, the level is deceptively open with a lot of pointless paths. Just power through and find that wizard. I think it's supposed to be a different wizard, but it's the exact same sprite, so I choose to believe it's Galadriel, making sure you've enjoyed your short vacation before sending you to the right episode.
The snow in the mountains did not stop him. Have our allies in the forest finish Blackthorne. And bring me the lightstone.
Whoa, hold up, 1 second, that's not an orc. The Androthi resistance are in combat with Androthi traders, who are called Andromedogs. No, I'm not making that up. Look, it's in the manual. The Andromedogs are a little tankier than the Grags we fought so far, taking 5 shots to kill as opposed to 2. They also don't start fights by going into cover like Grags do, and will instead immediately plink you. Oh, I really hate these guys. They are so irritating. I swear if you're not holding up as soon as you enter their line of sight, they will hit you. To top it off, they don't laugh, advance, or cock their weapons, forcing you to hit them in between their shots if you want to deal any damage. As for Grags, they are still around, and they do eventually get more health and some rapid-fire shotguns, but that's right at the end of the forest episode. There's not much else going on in the forest, to be honest. Despite it being a bit more open, it's fairly linear. Just keep heading right and you'll find the sage right after meeting the first blue Grags. The lovely forest druid gives us some of her power and tells us to seek the grave of Thoros for another hit point upgrade.
Release the stone beasts and do not return until the Son of Blouse is destroyed.
Welcome to the Sands of Sorrow, and Sorrow is right. I hope you had fun in the previous episodes because it's time for some annoying enemy placements. From the start we've got a Grag on a ledge. Get used to that, you'll be seeing it a lot. These blue orcs are super aggressive, they almost always take a step forward after shooting and they don't cock their weapons anymore. So their advance is your only window to hit them. Unless there's two of them in the room, then it's an exercise in frustration. Rolling could theoretically still work if the designers didn't keep putting them near the edge of the screen or on ledges as an artificial way to make the fights challenging. The distribution of items in this episode is weird and honestly it was starting to tire me. The first hand level is real stingy with healing. In fact, the only health potion you can get is from this guy in a secret area. But the next level inundates you with potions you don't need, to the point where I had to deliberately waste potions so I could carry more useful items. I should mention you don't retain items between levels, but at least you're healed when you enter a new level, so you don't have to worry about waste. I haven't talked about the stone beasts yet. You meet the first one early in the sands. Bugger off, Blizzard, I'm not falling for such a basic trick. The moment I'm in a corner you'll throw something new at me. There we go. It doesn't help that the stone beast spawn is a darker shade compared to the other rock formations. I honestly think it would have been better if you did make them the same color. The paranoia would have been worth it from a game designer perspective at least. The golems themselves are easily bested, shoot them when they're walking around and duck back when they roll at you. If it wasn't for the fact that random enemies could hold important items, I'd just run to the next screen and ignore them. Then again, this episode the focus has been less on inventory puzzling so much as platforming. There are so many jumps spread as far as possible. Unlike Prince of Persia, Blackthorne uses a strict grid for movement. While it has its advantages, the big disadvantage is that it makes timing max distance jumps too strict. Other grid-based games found ways of cheating the timing or use these jumps sparingly. The worst offender is on the last level of the episode. After facing multiple orc pincer squads and liberating a levitator from a rock golem, you have to bypass a force field whose generator is close to the left edge of the map. But it's one of those pressure plate doors with a button on the other side of the map. 4 screens away in fact, and they also put 2 max distance jumps in between them. Up until now I didn't even need to use the new save system that's included with this package, but fuck me, I am not restarting this level 20 times just because some lunatic decided to put the hardest part of the game right here. Once you pass the basic jumping puzzle and climb to the tomb, the spirit of Thoros himself bestows the final blessing on you and sends you to Sarlac's keep where your revenge awaits.
Blackthorne has infiltrated my domain. Weaken him as best you can and see to it that he finds his way here. I will deal with him myself.
Sarlac's Keep. As should be expected, this segment is hard as balls. No new enemies unless you count mustard Grags and impatient rock golems. No new weapons either. This is just a set of really tightly designed levels. This episode is just barely less annoying than the Sands of Sorrow. You'll still walk into ridiculous encounters, but the game has been subtly teaching you how to deal with its bullshit. To drive the point home, you barely get any healing items anymore. One wrong move sees several hit points disappear. Yeah, it's best to save the one potion you get for when you really need it. The worst part of the episode, at least for me, are the Andromedogs. Yes, our favorite gun nuts are back, and they're just as annoying as always. Yeah, fuck these guys. The worst Andromedog encounters are in the penultimate level. I had a couple of accidents, leaving me with a single hit point going into mixed encounters, something the game hasn't really done up until this point. This one isn't too bad, since it's just one Andromedog and a golem, but this last room? Holy hell, it's like waiting for 3 randomly blinking lights to sync up. Thankfully, once the doggo is down, the fight is much easier and you can head on to find Galadriel? Sir, you are starting to get on my nerves. Just give me the health boost and send me to the boss arena already before I slap you upside the head, thank you.
At last we meet, Well, now I shall destroy you just like I destroyed your weakling father. I have spent my entire life preparing for this moment, demon. You will not catch me off guard as you did my father. You are about to witness true strength. I am going to crush you and spit on your bones, boy. I think not. The time has come for my father to be avenged. Your skull will make a fine trophy. Give me your worst, monster. Oh, I shall.
Getting into this boss fight, you'll soon learn Sarlac doesn't behave like any other enemy in the game. He flits across the arena with ease, only vulnerable when he's fully visible, at which point he casts either lightning, explosions, or he just punches you. And to make matters worse, there are these two statues above raining firebombs into the middle of the arena. If you haven't mastered combat rolling, then this fight is quite harsh, which sucks because the game doesn't really teach you about combat rolling and the standard cover combat is completely useless here. Maybe if there were other boss fights too, the game could set some kind of standard so we know what to expect. Not that it's impossible to figure out. Keep rolling to avoid his punches and lightning, stay near the statue heads to avoid splash damage, and take cover when he throws a yellow attack. You'll soon hit a rhythm and then he goes down easy. Kyle's vengeance is complete and the Andrathi are free. The rest of Sarlac's forces are destroyed. And just like that, a great action hero fades into the mists of time. I'm glad I got to revisit Blackthorne after so many years. It's still quite fun, if a bit frustrating in parts. Blackthorne never got a sequel, not that I think it needs one. The most they could do at this point is add Blackthorne or Sarlac to Heroes of the Storm, and one of those is inevitable.